on charge, so not sure how it's going to stand up. Should have done this sooner. Bit wonky, but it'll do. That'll have to do for today. Bit of a Hi, Mr. M. Hi, Mum. My biggest fans. Mr. Moody, Jane Hardy. Don't seem to have many live people today, but I'm going to carry on anyway because it's going to go onto YouTube. And actually, the last reading I did, there were only about 10 people watching it live, but then I think it had like 150 views on Facebook afterwards, so it doesn't matter if it's not live, does it? So we got as far as they went night fishing. Well, they didn't yet. They're going night fishing. That was it. So they had torches that they were lighting on their way through the jungle, following the explorer, and then they came to a lake, and they took their shoes off, waded into the water, and the explorer, the last line that we read was the explorer saying, "Come on quickly, what are you waiting for?" Let's carry on then. Fred followed him into the water, feeling it soak his shorts and praying there was nothing in it with teeth. The lake was pure black, except where his burning torch cast a yellow light down through the water to the mud and stones of the lake bed. In the glow of the flames, pairs of red lights flitted and flashed under the surface of the water. Max laughed, delighted. "The bigger the eyes," said the explorer, "the bigger the fish. Move slowly towards them. Hold your torch close to the surface. You lower your spear as slowly as you can into the water, and then, at the last moment, you jab. Jab fast. Don't jab your own feet. Now split up." Lila and Con exchanged sceptical glances. They moved off across the lake, but they didn't split up. Their breath was audible. It was hard to tell in the dark, but Fred thought they might have been holding hands. Max reached out and took Fred's hand. His palm was warm and sticky. "Let's fish," said Max. Fred fumbled, trying to arrange his spear properly while keeping the flame away from his face. "If I give you the torch to hold," he said to Max, "will you try not to burn my hair off with it?" Max took the burning branch. "Maybe," he said. The spearing was harder than Fred had expected. The spear was thin and supple in his hand, and every time he brought it down over a fish, the fish had gone. A swarm of mosquitoes passed over them. Max sneezed and waved his burning branch over emphatically. "Max, I think I'd better take the branch." "No!" cried Max. No, it's mine. I'll be careful." A spear flew suddenly past them, inches from Fred's chest, and landed in the mud of the lake, its tip vibrating out of the water. Fred jumped. Max gave a yell, rocked backwards, grabbed at Fred's knees, and the two of them toppled backwards into the shallows. The branch extinguished. Fred sat up, spitting water, and looked around for Max. The explorer strode past, picked Max up with one hand, flipped him upright, and set him down on his feet. "Are you all right?" Fred asked Max. "I'm wet," he wailed. "I don't want to be wet." "But otherwise?" Max's face rippled as he debated whether or not to cry. He hesitated, then, "My underpants are soggy, but I'm all right." The explorer picked the spear out from the mud and where he'd thrown it. "Good boy," he said to Max. On the end of the spear was a fish as big as a man's thigh. "Breakfast," said the explorer. "Come here, Fred, and learn how it works. Max, stay on the shore and guard the fish. Here, I'll give you a torch." The explorer strode through the water to the nearest tree, pulled down a branch, lit it with his own, and handed it to Max. "Beautiful, no?" "Should Max be left with fire?" asked Fred. "He tends to eat things." The explorer turned to Max. "Boy, do not eat the fire or any other part of the world surrounding you. Do you understand?" "Yes," said Max. He was sniffing the fish. "You see, he understands," said the explorer. "Come on." Fred wrung the water out of his shirt and waded into the lake to stand near the explorer. The man seemed to be in a good mood. Fred risked a question. "When you go out into the trees—" "Yes?" The explorer waded further in, the water lapping up to his thighs. Fred followed. The black water closed over his waist. "What are you doing there? You're gone all day, but you don't come back with food. Are you hunting?" For a long time the explorer didn't answer. Instead, he stared down into the lake. He was so still that Fred wasn't sure if he was breathing. "There. See?" He pointed down at the murky water and the submerged roots. Fred could see nothing, only floating leaves and the moon. The explorer's arm moved so fast Fred didn't see it start or stop, but suddenly there was a long, thin fish flapping on the end of the spear. "A Cestrinchus," he said. "Needlejaw. Tastes like pike. Lots of bones, but delicious." He took a length of twine from his pocket. It had a thin flint, sharp as a needle, tied to the end. He threaded the fish onto the twine. "You asked what I do during the days," he said. "I'm fixing the thing I broke." Then he pivoted on his heel and swept the subject away with a gesture. Wonder what he could be fixing. He broke something and every day he goes off to fix it. Wonder what that could be. Oh, Maria. Hi, Maria. Fred stood... Oh, no. I missed it. Look, see how I grip it? Get the spear less than a thumb's height above the fish before you stab down. Fred stood hunched over the water. Red eyes glinted in the dark. He stabbed many rocks, some leaves, and his own ankle. Then, astonishingly, he felt the tip hit a fish. The first stab hit only the tail fin, but the fish was slowed and Fred stabbed again, frantically, until he felt the flint meet flesh. "Think I caught something!" He held his spear up to the light. On the end, something wriggled. It wasn't large, but it was indisputably a fish. Wolffish. They call it triara in these parts. Put it in your pocket, said the explorer. Fred checked to see if he was serious, but he didn't seem to be in a particularly jocular mood, so Fred put the fish in the pocket of his shorts. Its eyes stared up at him like a gym mistress. He waited for a moment, rinsing the fish blood off his hands before he dared try again. "What are you fixing?" The explorer waded deeper into the lake, up to his waist. He seemed to find it easier to speak here in the dark. "I was on a reconnaissance mission. I was flying, looking for any sign of life below. I was circling the city, trying to work out whether there was anything to see, and my wretched engine failed. I crashed through the canopy. There was a fire, and it killed a lot of the foliage." "What happened to the plane? Could you salvage it?" The man's eyes flicked down to the water, and he stirred his spear in the weeds. Fred tried again. "Is that what made the hole in the trees?" "In the canopy, yes. But the canopy was there for a reason. Whoever built this city had planted the trees so that their leaves interlock. You can't see the city from above. You could stand on the mountaintop and look down, and all you would see is uninterrupted green." "How long ago was it made?" "I don't know. With a city so entwined with the jungle around it, it's hard to be certain about a date. 100 years, probably several hundred more. It will take at least 50 to 100 years for those trees to grow again. I've cut down the burnt trees where I can and tried to replant in the same place." "I saw. There are new shoots down the middle of the square." "Precisely. But as you can imagine, cutting down a tree without a saw is not a relaxing pastime. It has taken time. Until the trees grow, I need to fix the canopy. I'm building a dust sheet of sorts, of palm leaves and vines to cover the gaps I made, an invisibility cloak." "Is that what you do when you leave during the day?" "Exactly. It's slowish work." He stabbed, brought up a fish and threaded it onto the twine. The firelight cast the cuts and scars on his hands into sharp relief. "I'm erecting new portions every month or so. I've fallen out of the trees more often than is ideal, but it will be a complete green roof, a living protection for the ruins." "But a protection from what?" "From people surveying the land from the air," he said shortly. "From people looking for El Dorado. From people looking to pack places like this into parcels of stone and sell them to curious ladies and gentlemen in Chelsea for the price of a bus driver's yearly wages. From people exactly like me." "Like you? But you're saving it." "No, I am undoing my own harm, but God knows what I might have done when I was younger. I was hungry to have my name in black capitals on the front page of the Times." He glanced sideways at Fred. Fred shifted uncomfortably and looked very hard at the water. Because that's what Fred wants, isn't it? He wants the papers to report on him finding this amazing place. The explorer stabbed again. This fish was still writhing hard, and he had to smack it against the sole of his shoe to kill it. Perhaps it was this that made him flush red in the fire's light. "Europeans have said cities like this were impossible. Europeans never believed in a place like this. They believed the jungle could never have supported such numbers. They said it was too infertile and called it a counterfeit paradise." He paused, staring unseeingly at the fish on the string. "The tribes the Europeans met were so small that people believed there could never have been great sweeping cities. They didn't realise the tribes they met on the river were small precisely because they were more readily found by men like me. Because European diseases were killing so many of them. Measles, influenza. God knows I've seen enough of that. This place does not need more people like me." A deep red anger spread down his neck into his arms. Fred didn't move. He only listened, harder than he had ever listened to anything in his life. "My wife was born in a village in the jungle." "A wife? He has a wife?" "We were young, barely 20. She breathed the jungle, wore the jungle. She died, from measles, soon after our boy was born." His voice was flat. "She caught it from a troop of Englishmen, amateur explorers." Anyone who's ever been in year 5, not this year's year 5, and have studied the Mayans, we learn about things like this, about when the Spanish conquistadors went to Mesoamerica and discovered the Mayan ruins and the Mayan tribes, and they took with them diseases from Europe, and as well as the other things that happened there with them falling out and destroying the religion and things of the Mayans. We actually learned about that and how they took disease over there, and that's why the tribes died out and left the cities to be abandoned. "And your son? What happened to your son?" "He would have turned 4 the week after he died. Cholera." The explorer stared at the dark. Cholera's a disease that maybe people still have it in other countries, but we don't have it here anymore. This land could once have supported millions of lives, and one day the world will know that. The time will come, I hope, when the world values people as much as it values land, but for now we do not need more men in pith helmets marching through the jungle towards us. He looked back down the path they had walked. Neither the people who passed through the city nor the city itself would be safe. Fred's blood was moving faster than usual through his body. He wanted to speak, to say something that would stop the explorer from looking so fierce and so lost, but his voice wouldn't come. Which is why the man stabbed again at the opaque water, but this time he missed, and there was a shake of passion in his hand. I ask that you swear not to tell anyone about this place. I ask it with every ounce of my heart. Fred was glad it was dark, glad that he couldn't see the explorer's face, nor the explorer his. I swear I won't. He thought, how can you make someone see that you're not lying, that you mean it? I'll never tell, he said louder. I swear. The explorer bowed his head. Thank you, Fred. I didn't understand before. I hadn't thought. I thought it was simple. Extraordinary things are rarely simple. But if you're right about what would happen, if you're sure, I would never dare say I was sure, but I believe I am right. I believe it enough to swear by it. Then I swear too. The explorer gave a sigh. It sounded of things that Fred could not untangle. Thank you. I'll die before I tell, said Fred. I'll explain it to the others, and I'll never say a single thing about you. Me neither, said a voice. You're my explorer. I don't like to share. Fred jumped. Max had paddled back into the lake, still holding the torch, and was standing directly behind the explorer, rib deep in water, preparing to hug his knee from behind. The explorer reared away, startled by the boy's hands. Good God! It's best not to show affection when you're holding a naked flame, child, he said gruffly. He ruffled Max's hair. Max giggled and waded through the shallows towards Lila and Con, singing a song whose lyrics seemed to be comprised entirely of the word fish. The explorer handed Fred his spear. Here, try mine. It's lighter. But what will you use? I don't technically need a spear. He crouched low, chest deep in the water, and lowered his hands to his elbows. Up to his elbows. One hand flashed out through the water. There was a certain amount of thrashing. Then the explorer held up a fish the size of his forearm, clasped in both hands. Its scales shone in the moonlight. The only downside of doing it like this, he said, is sometimes they turn out to be piranha, and that can be awkward. Fred thought of his father, back home, wrapped tightly in his pinstripe days. I wish you were my father, he muttered, so quietly that the explorer could choose not to hear. That's interesting, isn't it? Because Fred's talked a lot about missing his father and wanting to tell his father what he's been doing, but he's never actually said things about like how much he loves his father, so maybe his father doesn't actually teach him to do things or spend time with him like the explorer is. The explorer turned, his eyebrows high. I would not wish that. I did not excel at the job of father, he said sharply. And Fred, it is possible that your father will surprise you. It's in the nature of fathers. They're not as predictable as they seem. He is, said Fred. I wanted... He stopped, but the darkness made it easier to speak. I wanted to tell him about this place. I thought he'd be proud. I'm sure your father is very proud of you already, said the explorer. He was looking down at the water, half listening. No, he isn't. Fred glared at the man's back. It's simple. He'd rather my mother had never had me. Then she wouldn't. Oh, so his mum died when she had Fred, and he doesn't think his father loves him. It is not simple, Fred. The explorer turned and looked him full in the face. You must stop saying that word. Cut it out of your vocabulary. The complexity of it all is endless. Almost nothing in life is simple. Fred sighed. He was disappointed in the explorer. Adults always say that. It remains true. The world is larger than any human imagination. How could it ever be simple? He ducked under water, his body disappearing under the black surface, and came up holding in his fist something resembling an eel, which thrashed against his chest. He went on as if nothing had happened. A man can love and fear the responsibility that comes with love. A secret can be at once selfish and necessary. For God's sake, boy, truth is as thorny and various as the jungle itself. He turned to crouch in the water again. Then, suddenly, he froze. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Max, Fred, quick, out of the water. Con, Lila, get out of the water. Fred twisted to look round. Why? Out! His voice grew louder. Con and Lila started wading towards them. What's happening? Move faster! The explorer sprinted through the shallows, his bad leg dragging behind him. He grabbed Max around the waist, knocked Max's torch into the water, and strode in vast, uneven steps towards the bank. Fred ran after them, tripping over submerged roots. Lila pulled Con along through the mud. The explorer dropped Max on the ground. He landed head first, but Lila scooped him into her arms before he could start screaming. The explorer turned, spear raised, to face the lake. What's wrong? What did we do? Asked Con. Nothing. Now that the children were out of the lake, he sounded entirely placid. We're leaving. What is it, though? See those eyes? They shine red like the fish, there, at the far side of the lake. Lila swallowed. Is that what I think it is? Her eyes must have been sharp. Fred could see only a flash of red and a grey shape. Cayman, said the explorer. It's an old one, maybe 8 foot long. Probably not interested in any of you, but... He didn't finish the sentence. Have you ever been bitten? Asked Con. A few times. Come, we might as well leave rather fast. He tossed Max into the air, grabbed hold of one of his ankles and threw him over his shoulder. Follow me, you three. Put your feet where I put mine. Max, hanging over the man's back, foraged in his pocket. Fred, whispered Max from upside down, I have to tell you something. What is it? I ate a tiny bite of the explorer's fish while I was waiting. I was hungry. He held out the fish, which had his finger marks pressed into it. Is that all right? Fred looked at the creases in Max's anxious face. Yes, he said. He tried to sound as serious as he could. I wouldn't do it again. People do eat raw fish, so I don't think you need to panic. I won't die. No, in fact, I think maybe, in a very peculiar kind of way, we're all safe, for now. The explorer twisted round to look at Fred, almost smacking Max's head against a tree. Oh yes, you're safe, he said. Or rather, he clarified, you could still die out here, but if you pay attention, you will be safe from a lot of things. He stopped, turning back to look at the file of children behind him, moonlit, sweat-smeared. He shook his head. There is no way to say such things as need to be said without sounding like a cheerleader. He did not, Fred thought, look very much like a cheerleader. Cheerleaders, he believed, wore fewer animal teeth. Do you see all this? The explorer held his torch high, casting light on the trees and the sleeping birds. You don't have to be in a jungle to be an explorer, he said. Every human on this earth is an explorer. Exploring is nothing more than the paying of attention, writ large. Attention. That's what the world asks of you. If you pay ferocious attention to the world, you will be as safe as it is possible to be. He glared at them, each in turn. For once, Fred didn't flinch under the ferocity of his gaze. Speaking of attention, Lila, the explorer said, your sloth is trying to eat your hair. It will give it indigestion if it succeeds. He walked on, Max's thin ribs bouncing against his spine, carrying him home. The next chapter is called The Vow, also the name of a film. Nobody wanted to sleep that night. They sat over the fire, cooking the fish until it spat and sizzled. Fred explained to Lila and Con about the canopy and the man working every day to protect the great green secret at the heart of the jungle. We should do something, said Con, to prove him that we won't tell. Do you think he doesn't believe us? Asked Lila. Bacca lay snoring in her lap, with Max curled up on her foot, his eyes closed. It's not that exactly, but I don't think he's the easy-believing kind, said Con. I like that idea, said Fred. What should we do? We could swear, said Lila. We could make a blood vow like they do in books. I want something more permanent than that, said Con. She looked up at the roof, through which the stars shone, silver woven through green. I want something bigger, something that will make this last forever. I know. Lila sat up straighter, jerking Bacca awake. We could make a mark, like a tattoo. We don't have any ink, said Fred. But the explorer does, said Con. I saw it when I was collecting wood. He said he keeps his most precious things he doesn't want stolen under his hammock while he sleeps. There was a pause. Then Fred said, If he doesn't want them stolen, I don't know if I'd want to try stealing them. He sleeps with a knife. Excitement seemed to have made Con bold. I'll do it. Even Backer looked surprised. Con, said Lila, are you crazy? But she was already up and running across the square, on her tiptoes, half bent over and muttering warnings to herself as she went. Fred and Lila exchanged startled glances. Con returned 5 minutes later, bearing the ink aloft. I did it, she said. You stole it? Asked Lila, her voice full of admiration. Yes, said Con, flushed with victory in the light of the fire. Then, sort of. Sort of, said Fred. He was sort of awake. He sort of said we could borrow it. He said it's precious, and if we spill it, he'll put snakes in my hair. But I would have stolen it if I'd had to. Fred grinned. What should we tattoo then? We could write, I swear, said Lila. Too complicated. It would give us too many chances to go wrong, said Con. Or an X, said Fred, like the one on the map. I like that, said Lila. Con nodded. She sharpened the tip of the penknife with a flint, and Lila burnt the tip in the flames of the fire to sterilise it. Who wants to go first? Lila asked. There was a silence sharpened by the knife in Lila's hand. I'll do it, said Fred. He tried not to let his hands shake. It was harder than he'd expected to cut his own skin. He dug down, wincing sharply, and cut a thin line into the base of his thumb where it met his palm. Does it hurt? Asked Con anxiously. A bit, said Fred, his voice coming out tight. But not compared to everything else. He added a second line and dabbed away the blood. How do you think they put in the ink? I think they just drip it on, said Lila. The ink stung, and Fred bit his teeth together, but Con and Lila were both tactfully looking away. There, he said. He held it up to the firelight, a small X marked in ink and blood. Lila went next. She winced when the ink was added, but said nothing. Con took longer over hers, making sure the lines of the X were perfectly straight. If it's going to be forever, she said as she rubbed in the ink, I don't want it to be wonky. Max jerked upright suddenly. I want one, he said. Max, I thought you were asleep, said Lila. I was pretending. Shh, Maxie, go to sleep. I want one too. I want to do the secret swear. No, said Lila. Absolutely not. It hurts, and you'll cry, and the explorer will wake up. And anyway, Mama and Papa would kill me. I won't cry. You would, said Con. But it's my secret too, said Max. If you want me to keep it a secret, you have to let me. The others looked at each other. Lila sighed. Max did cry, but he tried very hard not to. Lila took the knife, and Max screwed up his eyes and bit his lips together and drummed his feet on the ground. And though the tears trickled down his face as Lila added the ink to his hands, he didn't yell. Shall we swear? Said Con. What shall we say? You do it, Fred, said Lila. You're oldest. Fred grinned, half embarrassed. We swear, he began. Just a second. Con threw an armful of kindling onto the fire, and it roared upwards towards the sky. OK, go. We swear to keep this place a secret, said Fred, until it's safe to tell the world about it, or until we die, whichever comes first. I swear, said Con solemnly. Then, though statistically we're more likely to die before we get a chance to tell anyone, you know. But she was smiling. I swear, said Lila, always. Swear, echoed Max. It's my city. He looked proudly down at his X. Nobody gets to share it with us. Con looked at Lila, and Lila looked at Fred. The three of them grinned at one another over Max's head. Oh, and it's bang on 6 o'clock, and that's the end of the chapter. So I think we'll leave it there, and then we can start afresh with this chapter on Monday. I'm just going to see how many chapters we've got left, because they're not numbered, are they? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 chapters left, so maybe 5 more reading sessions, I'd guess. Oh, a few more people on. Hi Freddie! Don't worry about being late. If you miss the start, you can just rewind it once it's posted. Oh, quite a lot of people actually clicked in. Hello everyone. So Wednesday at 5:30, normal time everybody. I will see you then. Have a nice couple of days and take care. Bye!